This is TC Hydro, a territorial control map for Team Fortress 2 by Valve. I recently was put into a game of Hydro for what feels like the first time in years, and yeah, not a lot of happy players.
But Hydro? What?
Maybe it would work if they opened up the entire map. How the fuck did the scout end up behind me?
So sad, can we delete Pyro?
Is there only these two always?
Yep. That's how it works.
That's kind of stupid.
I mean, I didn't mind too much. I actually had a fair bit of fun. But we had quite a few stalemates before Red finally just kinda gave up and let us roll over them. What is the deal with Hydro? I wouldn't be surprised if new players from the last 5, 7 or so years have never actually played on it, or have even heard of the map. Hydro was one of the maps included with TF2 since day dot. This includes 2 Fort, Dust Bowl, Granary, Gravel Pit, and the 5 control points version of Well. The other 5 maps still get played a lot today, especially 2 Fort and Dust Bowl. 2 Fort is the map for aimless fun. Either it be capping the intel, sniper battles, or just goofing around in the sewers, among many other things. Dust Bowl is not the best map, but it's great for playing a long game with an end goal, either attacking or defending. Well, Gravel Pit and Granary still hold it very well and get played fairly often too. Hydro, however, is not frequently played at all. In fact, to a degree, it's somewhat despised. I find that quite strange, as I remember back during my days of playing the PS3 version at launch, Hydro was quite fun to play on. Mind you, that's because we were all TF2 newbies back then, and just kinda stumbling around looking at the pretty colours. So, what has happened between 2007 and 2022 that has resulted in Hydro just kinda being ignored? Pre-launch, there seems to be a big focus on making Hydro something special. I brought up this video of Robin Walker talking about it in a previous video, and using our friend the Before Boolean from the same video, I found quite a few reviews talking about the map. There's this one from Eurogamer just before release where, for starters, it seems like decals, some kind of cosmetics, and even the Steam Workshop were ideas quite early on in development. But also, as stated by Walker, Hydro was made to be a map that can be replayed over and over again, with unique map points randomly chosen. This in theory allowed for a short 5-minute fight with a new map layer every time. Hydro was made this way so players wouldn't be overwhelmed by the number of new maps when starting the game, and could play on one with a lot of replay value and lack of repetition. It seems like during in-house testing, Hydro was a winner. This review from Destructoid by Anthony Birch, like Borderlands Anthony Birch? Huh. Well anyway, he gave a glowing review of Hydro's fluid level design. He was actually quite annoyed Hydro was the only TC map at launch. Well, Mr. Birch, I have some very sad news for you. The only slightly negative review I could find for Hydro was this one from IGN complaining that the scouts could capture before heavies could even get to the start area. There is actually a bit of truth to that. Heavy used to be slower and a bit weaker than he is today. I did run into a few other launch or pre-launch reviews mentioning Hydro, but it was just kinda, Hydro is a map in the game Team Fortress 2. I am a games journalist. 9 out of 10. The earliest signs of Hydro hate I found could be this mention in the Giant Bomb wiki, but the only data I could find on the article comes from the images alongside it. I did find this blog post from 2009 with someone saying they groan when Hydro comes up, but at the same time they said it like Turbine, so I don't know how valid their opinion is. Also, the blog poster says he likes Hydro, so I don't know, maybe people were mostly indifferent at the time. I myself mostly just played on wacky maps and achievement servers around the time, so I don't recall ever caring too much about Hydro. I did also find this Reddit post from RTF2 from 2011, with different people explaining why they don't like Hydro. The most common reasons given were the stalemates that frequently resulted in sudden death, but some posters still defended Hydro. Honestly, I could keep finding examples, but the general complaint was Hydro is stalemate heaven with the occasional steamroll. I also seem to remember when it was added to the casual map pool it had some glitches involving round timers, but based on the game I played, I guess that was fixed. Well, now we've checked the past, I think it's time for some... I asked on YouTube and Twitter for some opinions about the map, and yo, that is a lot of responses. Some of you have a lot to say as well. There was a lot of love for Hydro, which I found very surprising. Looking through all the comments, it was roughly half-half of players who liked Hydro and players who dislike it, with a slight lean towards the Hydro lovers. Not a lot of outright hate for the map, which I found interesting. For the Hydro appreciators, I noticed a reoccurring theme of nostalgia for the early days of TF2. The Xbox 360 version was mentioned a bit as well. I'm curious how many of these commenters have played Hydro recently, however. Quite a few brought up how well the map plays on TF2 Classic's 14 game mode. I've not played the TF2 Classic version, but it does pique my interest now. And a few mentioned they've never really had a good chance to play on it themselves. Pross said it was an interesting concept with poor execution. I pull up his comment because I like the idea of also showing the routes you can travel between sections. However, I don't entirely agree with his comments about the lack of routes between areas. I'll discuss this more later in the video. Dr. Kritzishk mentioned that they were part of a competitive Hydro event, where a meta strat of having a few players behind to defend occurred. I find this one interesting as I don't really consider Hydro to be a comp map. Phil Grimm asked if the Mercs live in Hydro based on expiration date. Yes they do. Paragon says it's one of the maps in the game. I can't disagree with that. TF2 Cut Content Wiki asks if I'll include stuff from the beta build. Probably not, as it's a bit out of scope for this video. If I find some pictures of it, I'll put them in here. Nintyuk, I'm just calling you Andrew, says if they change Hydro to a different game mode, it would play better. I kind of agree, but at the same time you're taking the TC out of the only TC map. And Forward Story brings up a lot of points I also agree with. Hydro being a map of its time and not really meeting the expectations of what modern players want. I think the point of Hydro losing its random layout appeal due to the amount of maps to play on is a very valid idea. They also mentioned not having the best experience on this map, which is a bit sad. Well, now we've looked at the history and got some feedback, let's look at the map. Hey, let's also look at the developer commentary at the same time. Also, this opens the map up completely, making it easier to navigate. Now, let's load up the level and... Oh, okay. Oh, hello,
Put your
goodbye.
crosshair over the floating commentary cases.
I guess the commentary is
your
tied
primary
to
fire
music.
again to stop the commentary. To play.
Line.
I can be reached at GayBen.
Now that's over with. Let's look at this satellite dish area. This was modeled after the ill-fated Arecibo telescope. So is Brazil's dish. I actually really like the layout of this area. However, I think the point being covered can be a little overpowered for the attacking team. This spawn area with the exits and the dish itself looks like it would have been hellish to map around. Now let's look at the iconic dam. Okay, so this commentary is just summarizing what I was talking about earlier. Still, Hydro is a very pretty map, especially this side of it.
Instead of producing a large number of...
Now, this is the first tunnel area. I'm not a fan of these. This one down here is not as bad due to the multiple pathways and having a fair bit of headroom. Okay, let's check these commentary notes. They're all about the shading and face movements. Cool stuff, but not about the map. Let's check the spawn rooms here. I remember really liking the lower exits in the early days of TF2 for some reason. I just guess they were kinda cooler than the normal exit. And up here is a nice sniper deck. Notice the water cooler rendered on the wrong layer. Okay, I forgot to check this note down here. Okay, it's about Ellen McLean, the voice actor for the announcer, GLaDOS from Portal, and the Combine Overwatch. There's something about this freeway side path that really stands out to me. I think it's because it reminds me of the Two Fort sewers. Okie dokie, let's go upstairs. Look, it's mini turbine. Actually, it's probably bigger than regular turbine. Also, this commentary is pretty much describing how to make turbine again.
There wasn't much we could do to alter its basic structure.
There's something cool I can show you in the spawn room. The map creator, Ike Karanen, left his signature of a yen symbol inside this wall. I like the little back area here. Kinda cozy. There should be a gate boom here, but it gets removed in the commentary mode. Speaking of which, look at Engineer go. He can even take his teleporter. Alright, let's head down this way to the final mid-cap area. First, let's explore these vents. They might be the ventiest vents in TF2. Actually, I forgot to show my least favorite spot.
With 9 classes
First,
of
some
characters
spy
and so many
facts.
weapons and unique ability.
So my main beef with the upper caves is the fact it's the only way from mini turbine to dish, making it the part of the map that stalemates the most. You do get a good view of the lower tunnels, you will die if you fall. The shallow ceiling has not aged this section well. Alright, let's learn about art direction.
The more you're...
Now let's head over to the path with the railing. I've mentioned it a few times in other videos, how it kinda looks like where Meet the Engineer is set, and how it's just kind of an interesting part of an interesting map.
Maps require impassable boundaries. But unless we restrict the environments to either interior spaces or steep canyons, these boundaries can't always block the player's view of the outlying unreachable area. In our more realistic titles like Half-Life 2, these boundaries often require fictional or visual explanations. In the heavily stylized world of Team Fortress 2, however, conspicuous artificiality is a core design principle, and so we can simplify or altogether ignore these explanations without compromising the player experience.
This point is probably the least interesting in my opinion, but there's still lots of movement options to get around, so it's got that going for it.
Along with a secondary grenade, tied more closer to the class. Team Fortress 2's focus on unique class roles led us to notice that the standard hand grenade was a more powerful combat decider than some of the primary weapons. This made the classes more similar in combat, not a desired effect. In addition, when we look at some of the Team Fortress Classics maps,
Alright, let's check out Blue's last area. It's hidden in a car garage. I miss this sort of hiding in plain sight design. I mean, it's not gone, but just not as badly hidden. Oh hey, it's Zabi Ing. He's the guy who was launched into space for making the snow on viaduct. Now let's end this by looking at Red's final base. It's in this area behind the dish spawn. Once again, more poorly hidden secret bases. I'd like to point out that in Red's final spawn, the doors are missing the handles and there's a misaligned texture, making the map unplayable. Valve, please fix.
The Scout is designed for players who are able to rapidly move around while tracking their target. Where other combat classes rely on high amounts of damage, the Scout relies on his high movement speed and double jump ability to dodge enemy fire. Much of his combat style is crafted through the features of his primary
At this point I accidentally right-clicked, which teleports you to the next commentary node. I kinda gave up here. You've basically seen the whole map anyway. I think it's time to analyze the game mode itself. Each stage of Hydra acts like a two-way attack-defend, with each team having a point to guard while trying to capture the other teams. This only changes on the final point area, where the defending team does not have to worry about capping the point, and the attacking team only has 5 minutes compared to the middle point's 8-minute rounds. This feeds into the reason why the map tends to be stalemate heaven. Compared to Attack Defense, King of the Hill, or Payload, where there's a win scenario if one team runs down the timer, if both teams are equally good and can't capture a point, no one wins. Everyone stalemates. Another problem I find with TC is that a team will have to split themselves into a defense group and an attack group. This isn't a problem in other modes like 5CP, as there's a buffer of control points to prevent a steamroll if players are too spaced out. But Hydra lacks these extra points, resulting in steamrolls if a team is unbalanced or unprepared. So the next question is, can we fix territorial control? My first thoughts were making TC active, having areas open and close as they're captured. But this just turns the map into a messy version of 6CP, plus lots of grieving potential if players stay behind in sealed areas. Yes, I know you could probably cover sections and trigger hurts or teleports or something, but that just adds to the complications and doesn't make sense. My second idea was to put a control point in the middle of the in-between sections and make the gameplay more like King of the Hill. But I think that would be too confusing for a lot of players. It would also make the areas pointless unless you move the points back, which leads to the problem of where do you put the respawn rooms. Maybe making Hydro into a domination style game mode like stand-in where one team has to capture all the points could work, but then you're also taking TC out of the only TC map. I also thought about removing the round timer and just having the round go on until someone wins. I actually think this might at least help a bit. I would like to see it tried at least. Only problem is that you encounter the 2-fort problem where people don't want to play an endless map, which is fair enough. If we remove the round timer, I would also like to see the final areas changed so they work like all the other areas. Make it so the defending team has to capture as well rather than just defend. Consistency is important. Really, I could just go on and on with potential ideas, and I know a lot of people have leave suggestions, so I'm just going to stop myself here. I think we just have to face the facts that territorial control is a bit crap. Even other abandoned game modes don't seem to get as much hate. Maybe Special Delivery does, but at least that game mode gets played on Halloween. What about using TC for a niche purpose? Lots of arena maps get used for custom game modes like Prop Hunt versus Hail and Gun Game. Could TC find a use in the custom mapping community? I sadly don't think so. Is the problem the map itself? I don't really agree. Personally, I think Hydro's layout is pretty good aside from some big sightlines and the cramped cave section you're forced to go through at times. Everywhere else holds up mostly fine in my opinion. Plus, it does seem despite its flaws, the map does have its fans the way it is. Is it fair on them to change everything? TC Hydro is a game mode experiment that did not pan out. The map was designed for short games on a randomly chosen layout, but as the TF2 community developed, it moved more towards either games with endless rounds, or game modes where at least one team can win. I do kinda feel bad for the TF team. They clearly put a lot of love into Hydro, only for it to be largely rejected by the community. Hydro is a beautiful flawed gem from the early days of TF2. We can't all be winners, but we can all try something different. So thank you for those who worked on Hydro, for trying something that didn't quite work out. It's better than not trying at all.
Okay, I'm going sniper to kill this.
I need battle too.
Yep, still man. Here it is.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.